It's warming up, it's getting wetter as well, and we have warnings in place. There's lots to get through in the short term. Plus, towards the end of the week, could something explosive occur out in the Atlantic? And it's also the anniversary of the Great Storm and that Michael Fish moment. Plenty to get through in this week's Met Office Deep Dive. Welcome along. My name's Alex Deakin. I'm a weather presenter here at the Met Office, and every Tuesday we do a deep dive using the touchscreen, looking at the various elements of meteorology that have been catching our eye or will be catching our eye in the coming days. If you're new to it, then welcome along. If you haven't subscribed to our channel already, then please do so, and do hit the thumbs up button. Give us a like as well and share the love. Let other people know that we are on here and that we do this every Tuesday. Now, this one is going to be particularly interesting, I suspect, for two reasons. The first one being all the weather that's going on, as I've already alluded to, but the second one is the brand new interface on our touchscreen. Now, Aidan used this last week. Aidan's been developing this over the past weeks, months, done a wonderful, wonderful job. I, however, haven't really used it. This is my first time, and yeah, it could be fun. So, you know, stay tuned for the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes or so to see if this old dog can indeed learn some new tricks. Plenty to talk about, as always. Let's get on with the bigger picture. As usual, we'll start with a satellite image, and yeah, we can see that we've seen weather systems piling in over the past 5 days from the Atlantic. Spain's been particularly badly hit by weather systems. You can see one spun up here and sent a spiral through northern Spain. Some heavy rain up across France as well. A similar track actually to Storm Kirk from previously. But notice towards the end, the last couple of days, we have actually started to see the weather patterns, rather than coming in from the Atlantic, just start to drift up more from the south. So we've changed almost 90 degrees. We started, actually a bit more than that, we started off with a northwesterly at the back end of last week. Then we had more of a westerly, and then for the past day or so, we've started to introduce our weather more coming up from the south. And that is why it is getting a little bit warmer. And here's the reason behind that. It's all to do with the position of the jet stream. As you might imagine, it's in this very amplified pattern. It's not barreling across the Atlantic like it often does. It's in this much more, well, exaggerated curve, and it's going way up to the north. And if anything, that is getting more extreme over the next 24 hours or so, pushing even further up to the north. So the jet stream, of course, those winds high up in the sky, that's what they're doing. But if we take off the jet stream, what's happening with the pressure pattern? We've got a chunky area of high pressure sitting to the east. We've got an area of low pressure sitting to the west. But because the jet stream's not pushing it in, it's only making slow progress. And that means with the high and the winds going around like that, and the low and the winds going around like that, the winds at the surface are coming up from the south. So the winds high in the sky are coming up from the south, and the winds at the surface are coming up from the south. So everything is being pushed up from the south, and of course, further south, it's a bit warmer than here, so we're wafting up the warmer air. Let's put the warmer air on, and yeah, we don't need the pressure on anymore. All those, actually, let's put the pressure back on. So this warmer air, particularly behind this warm front, you can see that if I just head out the way, is just gradually wafting its way northwards at the moment. So that's why the temperatures are on the rise. It was a cold start this morning across Scotland, I know that, but elsewhere it was a pretty warm start, and that warmer air is continuing to push northwards. These weather fronts are, though, pushing in, and they're bringing moisture. That will bring the rain. But let's first just take a look at the temperatures, because it is going to be really quite interesting over the next couple of days just how warm it gets. These are the temperatures for the next 4 days. So we're already today getting into the mid and one or two places, perhaps high teens. Come Wednesday afternoon, tomorrow, probably seeing the peak of the temperatures across the east. That's when we're going to see these temperatures getting up to 20, maybe 21. Could even squeak a degree or so higher if it stays sunny. That's a big if, however. Then Thursday and Friday temperatures do dip off a little bit, but even these values are above average. So yeah, the warmth isn't necessarily going to stick around too long, because as we'll see, this front just gradually comes pushing in, pushes that warmer air away. So the warmer air is with us for the next 24 hours or so. And then that cold front, if we just play through that, will gradually push away that warmer air. So following behind it, it's not particularly cold air, however. It's not really cold air. It's still coming in from the west, which is why our temperatures only dip a little bit. So throughout this week, temperatures are likely to stay above average. And we can compare that using, again, the new interface. Let us know if you like this new stylizing, if you like with the way you can see the 4 different days here going ahead. And these are the temperatures when compared to average, the maximum temperatures when compared to average. You can see that Wednesday is likely to see that peak with values around 6 degrees or so above the average for the time of year. And we can compare in particular the nights. This is quite useful. So this is looking at tonight. Tomorrow morning, first thing tomorrow morning, let's put it on the high-res data, comparing the night just gone, the night that's coming with the night just gone, if you see what I mean. So how much warmer it will be tonight compared to last night. And notice, I mentioned that frost across Scotland. It's going to be much warmer across Scotland tonight because that warmer air is coming in. And the overnight temperatures generally staying in double figures, some places likely to stay in the teens. So yes, a very warm night to come tonight across the UK. And those temperatures staying generally a bit above average throughout this week. So we did have a touch of frost to start the week, but the frost's now becoming a thing of the past with those nighttime temperatures, which I think we can show if I'm clever enough, like that. These are the nighttime values, generally staying, some places staying into the teens in places. So yeah, a very mild few days ahead. But of course, warm doesn't necessarily mean sunny, and for most of us it's pretty gloomy out there today, and if anything it's only going to get duller and gloomier because it is also going to get wetter. Let's again take a look at the big picture and see what's happening. So as we start, time of recording, we've got this big bump, this big push north of the jet stream dipping down here, and high pressure is generally in control. But what we're going to see as we go through the next 24 hours or so is that push, this dip here in the jet stream, that's a trough, and that's just getting closer and closer, bringing with it this low pressure. It's a slow progress because they're all aligned. It's not pushing the low across. The low is just sitting in the dip, and that's gradually just edging towards the UK. But it's pushing these weather fronts. They're bringing the moisture, and that will provide the outbreaks of rain as it comes in. Now, let's zoom in a little bit on this because it's quite hard to pick out here. But it's really quite subtle the way that things develop over the next 24 hours. And this has been one of the headaches for the forecaster over the past day or so, because as this trough is squeezing together and kind of breaking down, we call that a disrupting trough. But there are little filaments within here, you can just pick out them every now and then, that are generating a bit more activity high in the sky. This is the jet stream. This is 300 millibars where the aeroplanes fly, but it's what's going on high in the sky that dictates what the weather is down at the surface. And just those little subtle bursts of energy high up generate pulses of rain. They create spin, they create vorticity high up in the sky, and that generates rising air, and that creates the pockets of heavier rain that we're going to see. So pinpointing exactly where the rain is going to be, that's been the difficulty over the past day or so for the forecast for tonight. We have issued warnings though for the rainfall tonight, as we will see in a moment. Just wanted to show you another thing, because this is what the chief meteorologist Matt, who was on today, showed this morning, and this is kind of looking at the same thing. Sorry, it's a bit messy, you probably can't pinpoint too much, but that's kind of the point. There isn't really anything really obvious in here. There are little filaments. We're looking for the reds and the purples, areas of relative vorticity that create the spin, that generate what we call the forcing, that generate the pockets of heavier rain. And it's really quite subtle. That's the point of showing this chart. There isn't really a strong signal. That often happens when you have what's called a disrupting trough, which is, just to go back to it, where you start off with this nice big U shape, a nice trough like this, but by the time you get to, I've gone too far there, by the time you get to this stage on Thursday, it's really breaking down and almost breaking off into another one, and that's a disrupting trough, and that can give forecasters headaches, shall we say. Having said that, we do know that rain band is moving in tonight, and we can show that This is the rainfall accumulation over the next 4 days. So we're looking Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Then you can see that although it's been mostly dry, so this is for 24 hours. So although it's been a bit damp and drizzly, but we are going to see some heavier bursts of rain coming into the southwest tonight. But the main thing is here, I wanted to show you that both on Wednesday and Friday, it's these western areas that are going to bear the brunt of the wetter weather as it slowly creeps in. So let's take a look at what that rainfall might look like. Which one do I want now? Ooh, let's show the bars. Yeah, let's see if we can make the bars work. I think we can. So these are the rainfall bars. 12-hour accumulations. Actually, let's do 6-hour accumulations. I think that's better. So as we go into this evening, notice those bars just jump up. We start to see some rain. Let's zoom in on that so you can see it a little bit better. So we are expecting some heavier pulses of rain to come into the southwest. The big question, will I get rained on my cycle home tonight before the rain comes in? But then if we zoom through tonight, gradually push through tonight, look at those bars jumping up. That rain is going to be working its way northwards, and you can see these heavier bursts of rain. We can zoom in further on that. So it's Wales, southwest England, parts of Northern Ireland that are going to see these heavier bursts of rain as they move in, which is why we have warnings in place issued today. A couple of yellow warnings covering quite a broad area across Wales, parts of the West Midlands, northwest England, down across the southwest for those pulses of heavier showers. Now, because of the hit and miss nature, not everywhere in that zone, I mean, it's going to be wet, but not everywhere is likely to see those big totals. But where they do occur, they could cause problems. And we're looking at potentially 80 millimetres in some locations, particularly over the hills in the southwest, that could cause some issues. The same goes for Northern Ireland, southern parts of Northern Ireland over the hills here. A greater chance actually of seeing those heavier rainfall, but the actual impact's likely to be not quite as bad here. So 2 yellow warnings in place for that heavy rain that's coming in through tonight and tomorrow morning. And we're not done there either, because that rain will still keep coming in during tomorrow. Let's take a look at this. Is this going to work? Yeah, so that's the rainfall during tomorrow, building up and continuing even through into Friday. We've got more rain coming in from the west. So the next couple of days, we're looking at these rainfall totals really building up, I say, across these western parts of the UK. Can I show just the rain coming in? Maybe on this one. Yeah, so this is what's going on. This is the overview with the rain coming in tomorrow. There's the low pressure, these weather fronts, and there's that dip, that trough that's squeezing together, that's disrupting, pushing these rain bands northwards. These are the winds at the surface, so quite gusty winds coming up from the south, along the south coast, particularly the northeast, and they are the temperatures. And as you can see here, if we get the sunnier skies across the east and the southeast, that's where we'll have the higher temperatures, at least 19, 20, 21. Definitely possible through tomorrow afternoon. Let's find, yeah, I said there was a 20 on there. But then we see another pulse of that rain coming up across the southwest. Again, these weather fronts, it all depends on what's going on high up in the atmosphere as to where we see these pulses of rain, but the potential for further pulses of rain to come up from the north as we go through the course of Wednesday and then into Tuesday, and then by Thursday most of that rain is out of the way. So there's another little low coming in on Thursday, bringing some showery stuff to parts of Wales and southwest England. Could be quite breezy here as well, so around that little area of low pressure, getting quite breezy, and as we saw earlier, temperatures dipping back down, so still above average, but we're in the slightly cooler air, but that's only because it's very warm air that's coming up at the moment. So yeah, perhaps a slightly fresher feel, but I suspect it'll still feel pretty warm and pretty humid on Thursday. Then by the time we get to Friday, we're starting to see more of a change. More weather fronts coming in from the Atlantic, a more classic area of low pressure up to the northwest. Rain coming into the west. Many eastern areas look like having a dry day on Friday, but the winds also started to pick up. Notice you've got some gusts there on the gust graphic starting to increase. I take that off and we go back to Tuesday. So that's the bigger picture for the next couple of days. Heavy rain tonight and potentially for a good part of tomorrow across Scotland, parts of northern England, but particularly Wales, southwest England and Northern Ireland. That's where we've got those weather warnings in place. Then as we go through, gone too far again. I'll get used to this at one point. Let's take the jet stream off that front then providing the rain, providing, this is what I want to show. There's that weather front coming in. This is Wednesday night now, so still some heavier bursts of rain. Still at this time, much of the east will be dry. And then as we play through that, that rain starts to pull away. We can put the temperatures on, showing that cooler air coming in, but then there's this little area of low pressure just bringing some showers into the west for a time on Thursday. But then out in the Atlantic, a bigger area of low pressure, and these weather fronts start to swing by. Let's pause it there and let's take a look at Friday's weather, because that's quite interesting in itself. By this stage, the jet is kind of losing its north-south orientation. It's getting a bit angry, pulsing across the Atlantic, some heavier, some brighter pinks in there. That's the core of the jet, getting livelier and starting to turn our weather more in from the Atlantic. This area of low pressure spinning itself up towards Iceland, but these weather fronts will bring some wet and windy conditions into the northwest. Notice the isobars squeezing together. And that's indicative of some pretty lively gusts of wind coming up from the southwest. Now that's interesting and potentially disruptive, because we have some very high tides later this week. I think it's the second highest tides of the year. So if they tie in with these strong winds and this swell generated by this area of low pressure, that could create some issues, particularly across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, some large waves and possibly some coastal flooding as well. So that's another area that we need to watch. Let's show you those winds here as we go through the next couple of days. Let's see them appearing. There they are. So that's Friday. Those gusts, the stronger gusts getting into that 50, 60 mile an hour category across the far northwest. And again, because of the tides, and you can imagine there, pushing the seas up through this area as well. That's something to watch. If those strong winds really tie in with those high tides, that could cause a few issues. So that's something that we're keeping an eye on for Friday. So Friday itself likely to bring some wet and windy weather to the northwest, but many eastern areas staying largely dry and fine. But after that, well, I'm just going to fast forward to Sunday, because look at this, the potential for some very windy weather away from the UK, it has to be said, but up here, the possibility, a very deep area of low pressure and some very lively gusts coming close to the UK as we go into the weekend. And that is all part of this bigger switch around that we're going to see. So again, this is where we are now, the jet doing this big, highly amplified pattern. If we just fast forward to Sunday, look at what the jet's doing now. Much more kind of classic position, barreling in from the Atlantic, meridional setup, where the winds high in the sky are coming in from the Atlantic. And that is potentially generating quite a deep area of low pressure. Let's just rewind a little bit and see where that low comes from for the second half, well, maybe not, so yeah, second half of the weekend. So this is Friday. Let's take it back a little bit more even. There's a little area of low pressure. Doesn't look much, just sitting off the coast of southeast of the United States. Let's put the temperature profile on, take the jet stream off for now. There's some quite warm tropical air just ahead of it. And if we just fast forward, you'll see what happens. That low pressure starts to intensify a little bit, and then it kind of spawns ahead of it. There's some even warmer air, and that spawns another little area of low pressure ahead of it, and it's that which then generates into an area of low pressure that heads up somewhere to the west of the UK come the weekend. Why does it spin up so rapidly? Well, that's to do with what's going on, again, high up in the atmosphere. Let's put the jet stream back on, because it's that interaction, we've talked about this before in a deep dive, it's that interaction between the jet stream and the low pressure systems that can really intensify lows very rapidly. So initially it gets picked up, there's this streak in the jet here, that's kind of a bit of a right entrance, we call this, to the jet. That develops it a little bit, but it's what happens later on as we go through Saturday that's more interesting. So if we just fast forward, it crosses the jet stream. So still a few hundred miles away from the UK. This is Saturday morning. Still not particularly intense, but as it crosses the jet stream, Saturday evening, it's really starting to intensify now. There's a lot more isobars spewing out of it, and it gets into what we call a left exit. So this is kind of a jet streak, that peak in the jet here, You can imagine that's where the exit is of the jet, and that is an area where you get intensification of low pressure systems due to the way that the atmosphere is happening high up. There's a lot of divergence high in the sky, and that creates uplift, and that generates this area of low pressure, and it really spins it up. And you can really see that as we head towards Sunday, the early hours of Sunday morning. Still way out to the west of the UK, but that intensification is really something that we need to watch. And we give it a name. We call it explosive cyclogenesis. That's a genuine term. It's sometimes called a weather bomb as well, or bombogenesis even, and that's when low pressure systems developed by the jet stream suddenly kind of intensify really, really rapidly. And there's a definition which I can share with you. Explosive cyclogenesis is where a weather system, an area of low pressure, at mid-latitude, about 60 degrees or so, it varies depending on where you are on the Earth. But for our latitudes, if an area of low pressure drops by 24 millibars or 24 hectopascals in 24 hours, then we can say that that's explosive cyclogenesis. And that's what's happening here, and I can prove that to you by way of Aidan's new fancy graphics. So we're looking for a 24 millibar drop in 24 hours, 24 hectopascal drop in 24 hours. Let's come back to here. I need to put this fancy thing on. Hopefully this will work. And this should show the pressure. Look at that, it worked. So that's the pressure at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, 983 hectopascals. Hectopascal is equivalent to a millibar. So yeah, we use hectopascals nowadays. Fast forward to, what time was that? 9 o'clock in the morning, 980. Let's fast forward to 8 o'clock at night. Now it's dropped to 970. So it's dropped to 970 millibars. Fast forward just another few hours, and it's down to 952 at 4 o'clock in the morning. So that is really rapid intensification of that low pressure because of its interaction with the jet stream. So take it back, 24 hours. It was around 985. Is that 24 hours? Not even 24 hours. So Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, it's 985. Sunday morning, 4 o'clock, it's 952. So it's dropped 30 hectopascals in 24 hours, less than 24 hours. So that is rapid intensification. It's the rapid drop of the pressure that generates all the isobars. Let's take those off. Let's take those marks off. Let's take the jet stream off. And you can see, again, just going back from here, what it looks like. It's quite, I wouldn't say a flabby low with not too many low, but it's okay. It's an area of low pressure, nothing unusual about that. But fast forward to Sunday morning, and now look at it. It's a much different beast. There's way more isobars on it, which means the winds are that much stronger. So it's that rapid intensification. The isobars just pop out of it. Let's play through that 24 hours because I think that would be quite interesting just to watch it as it moves. Again, just there's the jet stream interacting. As it comes out the other side, pop, 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 the isobars just jumping out of it, suggesting that the winds are really rapidly picking up around this area of low pressure. Now, just to re-emphasize, this is all happening way to the west of the UK. It is something we need to watch. It's 5 days away. The models are in complete agreement. In fact, the one you're looking at here now, the Met Office computer model, is probably the most intense with this area of low pressure. But it is something that we need to keep a close eye on over the next couple of days because it is intensifying and it will generate some pretty strong winds. At the moment, it looks like the strongest winds will be up to the north and the west of the UK. But always interesting to keep a track on these areas of low pressure as they develop. So stay tuned to the forecast. But of course, you're going to do that anyway because you're watching the Met Office Deep Dive. That's the Met Office's model output for that low pressure system on Sunday. This is the European model output, and this is the ensemble output. We talked about ensembles before, where you run the same computer model many, many times. And there's a good video actually about ensembles and how they work. We'll put that in the link. We'll put the link in the description once we've finished this. But this is showing the potential positions for the area of low pressure from the European model. It's called a Dalmatian plot. It's pretty, isn't it? Each one of these little circles is when you run the model where that low pressure system could be. And there's quite a cluster up to the northwest of the UK. So there's a high confidence that it's going to be somewhere up to the northwest of the UK. You probably can't see it too well on that one. Let's zoom in a little bit. And yeah, can you see that now? Ooh, can I draw? Let's see. What colour should we go with? Blue. So the UK is in here. So that's Scotland, East Anglia, Southern England. So it might be better to, you might have a better view of it there. And there is Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland. Is that better? Yeah, that's quite clear, isn't it? That's a good outline. So that's where all the low pressure systems are clustered. So reasonably high confidence that some low is going to be forming out here. But how intense it is, that varies. The intensity is dictated to by the colour. So each coloured dot represents the central pressure. And I'll go back to this one because the scale's on this one, which makes it a bit clearer. The pinks are the deeper areas of low pressure down to what, 960, 955. The yellows and the greens, which are the more of them, is kind of 965, 970 millibars. And notice how the greens and the pinks are kind of separate. So the pinks, the deeper areas of low pressure, are further away from. Oh, I've lost my outline. I'm going to have to do my outline again. Oh, it's back. Oh, it's back. So the pinks, he's good that Aidan, he knows what he's doing. The pinks are further away from the UK and the yellows and the greens are generally a bit closer to the UK. And that's a rule of meteorology, whereas the deeper the low pressure, it tends to veer more away to the left-hand side in the northern hemisphere. So the deeper lows tend to veer away more that way. And the shallower lows, the less intense lows, tend to steer more to the right, and that's quite clear there in the projected Dalmatian plot from the European model. So I just wanted to share that. I thought it was quite interesting. So again, just an area that we need to watch. Another thing really interesting to show you on this plot. Again, this was pointed out by Dan, who's on medium range today. So big thanks to Dan for sending these charts. Again, always say this, but we couldn't do this without the help of the wonderful meteorologist here at the Met Office, so a big shout out to Dan. He also pointed out on this Dalmatian plot, you can actually see a kind of stripe here. You can make that out of the kind of muddy purple brown colours. And there are also potential little areas of low pressure that are perhaps developing on the cold front, on the front from this area of low pressure. Let me show you that. Let's fast forward, show you the chart for Sunday. So there's Sunday, there's the low pressure, don't need the jet stream anymore. There's the low pressure, there's the trailing front down to the south. And in this kind of setup, there's always the potential along that cold front for what we call a little wave to develop that can spin up into an area of low pressure. And that's what that Dalmatian plot was showing with the suggested dots kind of tracking along this cold front. There is the potential that this cold front could have waves on it. Now that will generate a bit more rain. It will also slow the progress of the front down, but it's also potentially an area that could even spin up into quite a vigorous low in itself, particularly when you've got such an active jet stream. Because the jet is so active, if you do get a little weakness on this low pressure, it could spin up into an area of low pressure itself. So that's another area we need to watch, and some models are doing that as well. So that is another interesting point of note within that Dalmatian plot there. So yeah, you can see that there. Just something else to watch. They're not as intense, you know, the colours of the pinky purples at this range, but there is just the suggestion there that we may see something forming on that cold front. So that's another area to watch. So the potential for some wet and windy weather as we go through the weekend into the early part of next week. Oh, right, there's lots going on this week, isn't there? And I'm just about coping with the screen. Sorry if it's a bit of a ramble. I will get better with it. Just a couple of other things I wanted to mention that grabbed my attention on social media. I just wanted to point out this. I saw this on Threads from @ZoomEarth. They have some great satellite imagery on there. This is just a cluster of thunderstorms, little circulation, quite a small feature, small, went high pitched then, didn't it? Way out in the Atlantic. And this is just something that the National Hurricane Center are watching, because it has the potential to develop into a tropical storm. A long way from land at the moment, but I just thought I'd show you it because it really shows potentially just how tropical storms form. You can see the circulation in there. Here's some lines I drew earlier. Some lines, some arrows. You can see that circulation in there, and you can see that cloud head, that thunderstorm was coming out of the screen and then getting really diffuse as it hits the top of the atmosphere, and there's other little clusters of thunderstorms brewing up to the north. So this is just a little circulation. It's not in a perfect conditions for development at the moment, but it may change, and the National Hurricane Center are monitoring it, as I say, way out in the Atlantic, not really near any land at the moment, but it does have a potential, as it drifts naturally further west, it will come across more conducive atmospheric conditions, warmer seas, conditions higher in the sky, to potentially develop it into a tropical cyclone. And so there's a 60% chance, I think the latest time from National Hurricane Center, of seeing that develop into a storm system, and that's its potential cone as well, heading towards the Caribbean. So that's something we'll be keeping a close eye on as well. But I just thought that was really quite interesting. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Almost the kind of the birth, if you like, of a tropical cyclone. Really quite interesting. And one final thing before I shut up for the week. It's the anniversary of the Great Storm. Yes, the night of the 15th into the 16th of October 1987. Who remembers that? I do. And I worked very closely with a man who remembers it even better than I, Mr. Michael Fish. Very, very fortunate to spend a few years working with Michael Fish when I was at the BBC Weather Centre. And this was kind of his night, wasn't it? Yes. Who remembers this storm? Really intense area of low pressure. Let's have a slightly closer look. This is the analysis. This is the actual pressure chart from midnight, and you can see the low in there. Can you see it? Do I need to draw over it again? Perhaps I do. So here's Scotland, southern England, and there's Wales and Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland. The low's just in here. Deep area of low. And you can see that number there, 960 millibars. And then, of course, what happened, it intensified on its way in through the evening, out in the Bay of Biscay, popped up. We didn't have many weather observations out here, which is why it kind of slipped through the nets. There were signals a few days earlier that there'll be some wet and windy weather, but what happened was it intensified more rapidly. And going back to that point I made earlier, because it was more intense. Did that work? Am I on blue now? Because it was more intense, it went a little further north. We were expecting it to head across France, but because it was more intense, right, rule of meteorology, because it's a deeper low, it actually shifted further north and actually clipped across up towards East Anglia and created those really strong winds across the southeast of England, causing fatalities. Many, many thousands of, if not millions of trees actually felled that night. Really famous storm, famous for Michael Fish, of course, but also Bill Giles on the lunchtime forecast. He didn't do himself any favours either. Since then, of course, we've had huge developments in computer models, and now very, very unlikely that we wouldn't spot something like that. And now we have much better warning systems. Hard to believe, actually, back in '87, we just didn't have the method of warning people, even if we had a better forecast for this on the night. So things have improved, thankfully, in the past 37 years. But yeah, the anniversary of the Great Storm and Michael Fish and all that. Okay, that is pretty much it from me for this week. Again, apologies if I've been a bit rambly this week, but lots to talk about and a bit of a struggle with me and the new technology, but I will get better. Let us know what you think. Really keen for your feedback on the way it looks and the way it feels and the way it works and everything. Do you like these 4-up graphics, for example? Anything else that you'd like us to see, you'd like us to discuss? Please do keep your comments coming in. Please share. Please give us the thumbs up as well. But thank you very much for watching, and there'll be another deep dive same time next week.